This is your Wretched Recap for February 27th, 2026. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Zach, the Wretched Watchman, and I'm bringing you, Wretched Recap for this past week. And I'm just bringing you a little bit of news of what's been going on this past week, things that we haven't necessarily been able to get to in the podcast, the live stream podcast that we do. This is the Wretched Recap, and this is a quick hit show where we go over a few of those things during the week. And so we got a lot of stuff that's happening. It's absolutely insane what's going on in the world, to say the least, but we can't necessarily get to everything that we hope to, on the live streams and whatnot. So if you are missing out on those live stream podcasts that we do, we are live every Tuesday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys tune in for those. We do a lot of deep dives. We go over a lot of information where we don't want a bias leaning type of take on it. We just want to know the facts of what's going on so we can do our jobs as watchmen, as we're commanded to do in these last days. So make sure you guys tune in for those live streams. But again, there's things that we can't necessarily get to, so we're going to go ahead and get to a few of these things on today's recap. So we got an Army officer auction. We got license plates for TPUSA. We got young Republican child traffic. We got a North Carolina pastor back in business, and we got a MAGA pastor protects molester. And so, there's kind of a big theme that's been for this week, but there's also a big theme that has been occurring a lot recently that we'll kind of go over as we go through these things. So let's just go ahead and get into this. And on the first one, Army officer auction. Let's take a look at what's going on with this. And it says, Army warrant officers will bid against each other for their next bonus. Officials said it was a way for warrant officers to bid their true value. This is not good. It says the Army will soon have senior warrant officers bid against each other in an eBay-style auction for retention bonuses and 6-year service commitments. Soldiers who agree to take a minimum bonus can cash in, while those who ask for larger ones will lose out, Army officials announced in a recent press release. It says, dubbed the Warrant Officer Retention Bonus Auction, the system will debut in March, an Army official said Friday. In the news release, Army officials said that the new system represents a shift from traditional fixed-rate bonuses to a more flexible, market-driven system, and that the auction encourages warrant officers to bid their true value. So basically, before we get into the details of this thing, basically they're going to run the military like an economic business, and basically you're going to have leadership attempt to outbid or underbid fellow brothers in arms, as well as taking away resources from subordinates below them. This is just a recipe for disaster. But what do you expect from a Fox News host taking over? The Pentagon. It says senior warrant officers hoping to receive a bonus for extending their active duty services commitment will submit confidential bids, which represent the minimum monthly paycheck bump each soldier would be satisfied receiving to sign a new 6-year contract. Once all eligible warrant officers submit their bids, Army officials will determine both the amount of the bonus payment and who will receive it by calculating the auction's market clearing rate, a concept used widely in economics and finance. Imagine that. In that business too, the winning bid is the bonus amount that would spend all of the program's funding for the year. Among the most soldiers who agreed to accept payment that size or smaller with their bids, all soldiers who win in the auction will receive the winning bonus even if their bid was lower. Those who bid too high will get nothing. You get nothing. So with this one, I'll be honest, I'm not a military man. I'm not. But I've had some family members who were military men, and I know some who are and whatnot. And I've talked to a couple of people in the military about this and their opinions regarding it. And I've gotten some information from others, a couple actual warrant officers. They're retired now, but they were warrant officers. And I can tell you with unanimous agreement that they said this is the dumbest thing that they've ever heard. This is the stupidest thing that they've ever heard. And some of the responses I got had expletives in them just to emphasize how bad this idea actually is. Again, a lot of them were explaining how the best that I could understand, but a lot of them were explaining that, yeah, you're going to have military guys who are supposed to be loyal brothers in arms, that are always supposed to be watching out for themselves, watching, looking after each other, watching each other's backs and whatnot. They're going to be bidding against each other, basically saying, I'm more valuable than this guy, so get rid of this guy who I'm supposed to be loyal to and a brother in arms to, and I'm supposed to be, and I'm better than him. And they're saying this is basically just a way to undermine each other. This is a way to start having warrant officers who, from military guys themselves, already have egos as it is because of their positions. They're basically going to be going at each other, and it's all going to be in a silent auction type of way because the leadership has decided for them to do that. Then a couple other military dudes also explained to me that this is a case of you're going to have the most or the least qualified officers retaining position in the military, because all of the officers that actually are really good at their jobs and believe that they value themselves much better than that are going to outbid themselves a position in the military. So you're actually going to have a weaker leadership position, a low qualifying or a low quality position, because you want to try and do a business-like, finance-like system that destroys loyalty. The least qualified person gets the job, and you're actually taking money away from the subordinates in return. So this just goes to show how cooked this country is and how weak this country is and whatnot. It's interesting from this administration, who always talked about how DEI was ruining merit-based leadership positions. It's interesting that they're actually doing the same thing on their end, where it's not about merit, and it's actually going to bring in the least qualified for their position. Interesting how that works. So interesting. We'll see how that plays out in the future. Next up, license plates for TPUSA. Let's see what we got going on here. It says Republican plan would send license plates fees to Turning Point USA to memorialize Charlie Kirk. Jake Hoffman, whose firms received millions from Turning Point affiliated groups, sponsored legislation to memorialize the organization's slain founder. And it just keeps on going with this religion of Satan, shall we say. Legislative Republicans want to memorialize Charlie Kirk by creating a license plate in his honor that will direct cash the state collects from Arizona drivers to TPUSA. You just can't make this stuff up, man. We live in a reality TV show, and I hope you guys realize that. The specialty license plates is the brainchild of Senator Jake Hoffman, a Queen Creek Republican and founder of the Arizona Freedom Caucus, who works closely with Kirk, and those companies have been paid millions of dollars by TPUSA. Hoffman's Senate Bill 1439 would allow for the creation of special Arizona license plates memorializing Kirk and recognizing TPUSA. For every driver that pays $25 to get the specialty plate, the far-right advocacy group would get $17. So basically, spend $25 to get Charlie Kirk's face plastered on the back end of your Chevy Malibu, and you send $17 to TPUSA. Hoffman argued that Turning Point USA is not a political organization. Oh, that's cute. That's cute. He argues that Turning Point USA is not a political organization. My, oh my. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's great. That's like claiming a German Shepherd doesn't like a freshly given bone. Hoffman argued that the Turning Point USA is not a political organization, but rather a charitable nonprofit that engages in the promotion of free markets and limited governments and open debate. My word. If he was Pinocchio, his nose has gone around the world 3 times by now. Hoffman is correct that the Internal Revenue Service recognizes TPUSA as a public charity. How? I don't know. But anyone familiar with the group knows that it advances right-wing causes and exclusively promotes conservative policies. It pushes the Republican MAGA agenda. It pushes the NAR agenda. It pushes all of these things that is just wrapping around or wrapping this country around a mystery religion syndicate. Its sister organization, Turning Point Action, works to get Republican candidates elected and register Republican voters. And then you add in Turning Point Faith, and then you've got a whole new mess of things. Interesting. And Hoffman is well aware of that as he worked closely with TPUSA for more than a decade. Hoffman is the president and CEO of consulting and marketing firms Rally Forge and 110. From 2017 to 2019, TPUSA paid Rally Forge a total of more than $1.6 million for advertising, marketing, and digital education services, according to publicly available TPUSA DAX documents. In 2022 and 2023, Turning Point Action paid 110 a total of more than $1 million for social and digital meeting advertisement, according to said tax filings. Hoffman went on to say that his companies have provided professional services for Turning Point organizations in the past. An Arizona campaign finance report showed that Turning Point Action paid 110 more than $450,000 for services last year through at least October 2025. There's a lot more stuff on that, but yeah, if you want to look into it, you guys can, but it's pretty clear. We got ourselves another situation where they're trying to funnel as much money into TPUSA as they possibly can. TPUSA is a disaster of a group. We've gone over a bunch of their stuff when it comes to the whole MAGA situation, when it comes to Satan's religion of politics, when it comes to division, dividing this country in order to allow the takeover to happen much more easily. We've talked about the connections to the NAR, the New Apostolic Reformation, and what they're involved with that. We've talked about how there's connections to Scientology with all this stuff. The Q organization, or not, it's not an organization, but the Q movement is connected to this organization, and a whole bunch of those things. Plus, there's back-end history when it comes to Charlie Kirk and Erica Kirk and all those affiliated with it, and it just the pipeline of bad after disaster after satanic is all connected to Turning Point USA, and the churches have actively allowed these groups to come in to their places and start poisoning the well of the congregants, and that is clear as day when you look at what's going on in the churches when these Christians proclaim to be followers of Jesus Christ, but more than anything, they just use the name of Jesus Christ in order to push politics because their pastor told them so, because that pastor's on the payroll of people like Turning Point USA. And where does Turning Point USA get their money from? Elites, globalists, and now apparently the state of Arizona. Just keeps on rolling, doesn't it? Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. We're going to move to young Republican child traffic. What's going on with this? You're going to notice that there is a theme going around when it comes to politicians and political groups that are all being connected to child trafficking and just sexual assault and the array of it. We got Alaska legislators' chief of staff arrested on child sex crime charges. The state legislator's former chief of staff faces charges of sexual child exploitation and child sex trafficking. Federal agents arrested Craig Scott Valdez, 36, early Friday in Juneau, according to court documents. Valdez is an Anchorage resident listed as having served as Republican Wasilla State Senator George Rauscher's chief of staff since November. Valdez was terminated Friday, hours after the charges were made public. Valdez was elected as chair of the Anchorage Young Republicans in January 2025 and became the group's state committee chair last month, according to social media posts. There's been a lot of bad stuff coming out about the young Republican groups and their connections to not only things like this when it comes to child exploitation and trafficking and whatnot, but there's been a lot of connections to promoting murdering of people who are against them on political stuff. There's been a lot of promotion of actual Nazism in young Republicans, and I don't mean the stuff that could be, could not be type of thing. I mean they actually went full on promotion of Nazism in these things. So the Young Republicans group, pretty interesting what's going on in there. I know we like to talk a lot about, the Young Democrats and stuff and what they got going on. Of course, they're not, any shining star in any type of way, but the Young Republicans, they're joining them when it comes to being atrocious, to say the least. It says a grand jury on Tuesday indicted Valdez on charges of sex trafficking, a minor, sexual exploitation of a minor, for both allegedly producing and receiving child sexual abuse material, and coercion and enticement of a minor. The alleged crimes occurred in October of 2025, according to the indictment. Court documents detail a specific instance in which Valdez allegedly lured a 15-year-old girl to his Anchorage home, but prosecutors also wrote that the FBI has identified at least 11 other potential victims. The federal authorities are asking the public for help as their investigation continues. Valdez had met the 15-year-old girl on Snapchat, which is just a common theme now, picked her up at home and drove her to his house for the purpose of sexually exploiting the child to celebrate his birthday, the detention memorandum says. The girl's mother then entered the residence, struck Valdez once on the face, and recovered the child, and that child exhibited signs of extreme drug or alcohol intoxication and had difficulty walking and maintaining consciousness, the memo says. So not only was he planning on doing something to the child, but then on top of that, he drugged her. This is the worst of the worst. I stand by, and I know this is not something that a lot of Christians like to hear, but I stand by the idea that if you're doing this stuff to a child, God is very clear about this, specifically when he talks about attaching a millstone to the neck and throwing them into the ocean. But I'm one of those people where it's like, castrate them and send them to the afterlife. I got to be careful how I say it because I'm on YouTube, but that's how I view it when it comes to those who do things to children. The girl later told investigators that other children had introduced her to Valdez when she was 13 or 14 years old. Law enforcement officials do not think that the October incident was the first time Valdez exploited the girl, nor do they think she was his only victim. Have you guys noticed that just recently, about a year or so, this stuff has increased significantly? The public releasing of information when it comes to these people getting caught doing child trafficking, child exploitation, and again, the whole gamut of things when it comes to this. This is starting to increase significantly. And I don't necessarily mean, when I say increase, I don't necessarily mean that the actions of doing it has necessarily increased, because I believe that this stuff has been a problem for a very long time, and maybe it has increased on the back end of things. But I think the releasing of public display, like actually getting the news out, the reports about it, has increased. And I think that in itself is something that we should pay attention to when we talk about living in these last days and whatnot. It's definitely, a lot of this stuff is starting to come to light. Again, we're not even seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to it, though. I can guarantee that. Speaking of a recurring theme that's been happening, let's get into the next stuff. North Carolina pastor back in business. Let's take a look at this. It says, disgraced new North Carolina pastor starts new church, announces new $1 million property. My word. North Carolina pastor who was fired over sexual misconduct from his job at a non-denominational church has started a new church with a $1.1 million property just 4 miles away. Jordan Green, 38, made headlines in April 2024 when he was fired as lead pastor of Pursuit Church in Denver, 26 miles north of Charlotte. The church's dismissal letter referenced how Green told partial truths and manipulated the events before finally confessing his abuse of women in his congregation. 2 years later, with a new congregation and a new church name, Green is planning to rebuild only a short distance from his former church. There's room in this community for multiple healthy churches, he said in a 2,850-word statement. Healthy church. Sorry, dude. Actually, I'm not sorry. You're not healthy. You're poisoned. You have disqualified yourself from the position of pastor. There's no, I'm going to go and heal and recover and repent and then take a position of leadership back at a church. No, you're done. You've disqualified yourself. There's no returning to it. Scripture's pretty clear on that. It gives qualifiers for each position in the church. And if you mess up on one, you're done. You're done. But the problem is a lot of pastors now, because this is a business, it's not ministry, it's a business. They use the name of Jesus to have a job and a career and make a bunch of money. That's why they don't care about the qualifications that Scripture outlines for church leadership. That's why they don't care. That's why you have people like this who disqualify themselves and keep going back. You have people that have done it when it comes to Houston from Hillsong, covering up what his dad did when it comes to child exploitation and all that type of stuff. Then you got, what's his name? Carl Lentz. He did the same thing. You got these less known pastors all over the place that continue to return back to leadership in churches, even though they've disqualified themselves. You have people that are still actively doing it, that they weren't participants, quote unquote, in it, but they helped cover it up. People like Jimmy Evans, when he helped cover it up Robert Morris and what he was doing. He's still doing leadership. He's still, a leader in the church and ministry and all that type of stuff. He disqualified himself, but yet he's still doing it because it's a business. It has nothing to do with abiding by the command of Jesus Christ and what we are told to do. This is all about making money, having clout, keeping a lifestyle. And they realize that they're not going to be able to get a job anywhere else because of the things that they've done. So this is the only thing that they can do. And they prey on Christians to take the spineless position of, don't judge, that we need to accept these people back. That's the loving thing to do. And then those are the same Christians that point fingers at everybody else saying, you're the reason why the church is so bad. That's what's going on. It says the reason he left was past sexual misconduct with 2 female staffers at Pursuit Church and 2 additional situations that were conversational in nature. I instigated an extremely unhealthy situation where I put my hands on her in an unwanted way, and said Green of his misconduct towards one woman. That behavior was sinful and inexcusable and disqualifying of church leadership. An incident with a second woman, also on his staff, involved approximately 12 to 15 moments, including hugs, prolonged embraces, one kiss, and sinful conversations, the statement read. According to Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff's Representative Sherry Siegel, who spoke to TRR on Monday and conducted a county record search, no formal criminal charges have been filed against Green. That's sad. Green recounts his time after the dismissal as defined by repentance, counseling, and rebuilding my marriage and family. He said he spent 50 days alone in a cabin in the mountains, broken up only by weekly drives to back home on regular counseling sessions. Whoop-de-doo. Cool. I went and did all this stuff, this sinful, illegal stuff, and I did all these things that I need to spend the rest of my life mourning over and making sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing to recover from all this stuff. And I'm just going to go spend 50 days alone in a cabin and it'll all be good. People who say that, where it's like, oh, I know I messed up and I did sin and stuff like that, so I'm just going to go into a cabin somewhere, a vacation for a couple months, and I'll be good after that. It's just the dumbest thing. Kenny Mills, 45, lead pastor at Home Church in nearby Maiden, who has known Green since 2009, said that he stood by Green after his dismissal. Mills gave Green an office space at his church, and both men said that they have met nearly every day for the past 21 months. Cool. Getting together with my buddy that I've known for a while for a couple months every day and all that stuff. Good stuff. That's recovery. Green's leave of absence from pastoring didn't last long. In September 2024, 5 months after being dismissed from Pursuit, Green opened his home for a small church to hear him preach on Sundays. So 5 months after being dismissed from the church, from all the things that he did, he was back in with a home church preaching and having people coming over and listening to him. ridiculous, man. By May of 2025, he had filed an assumed business name certificate with the county to launch Mercy Movement Church. On February 7th, Green announced that Mercy Movement Church had acquired a 25-acre plot of land in Denver near Pursuit. And you know what? He'll have a bunch of people flock to his church, send in a whole bunch of money, and he's going to do the sympathy thing where he'll go up there on Sundays and talk about what he did and how he's repented and use it as an example for his sermons. And everybody's going to have crocodile tears and everything. And they're going to be sending him a whole bunch of money and all these stuff, supporting him, because that's what we need to do. Even though the scripture says he has disqualified himself, he needs to sit under counseling. He needs to make sure that he does all these things. And he is in no way, shape, or form able to go and have a leadership position again. But again, this is a recurring theme, and this is why the church is it's dead at this point. This modern church, specifically the American church, but this modern church is just, it's a cadaver. It's just a body that's being weekend at Bernie's by demons at this point and charading itself, and Christians are flocking to it, just like Christians continue to flock towards political leaders. And I'm sitting there going, and I look at what the Christian does when it comes to political leaders, and I look at what the Christian does when it comes to the modern church of today, and I'm sitting here going, my word, the mindset of this world is so ready for the beast to step onto the scene, because they are going to follow him unquestionably and just go along with whatever he has to say. And it's clear when you look at how, and I'm not even talking about the secular world. I'm talking about the Christian world, the Christians, or those who proclaim to be Christians, and how they view politics and the modern church, man. It's ready. Satan did a good job of prepping this society, I'll tell you what. And on to the last one. Yes, MAGA pastor protects molester. Says Georgia church that hosted Trump accused of not reporting child molester. A Georgia prosecutor slammed two charismatic pastors associated with President Donald Trump for failing to report an employee who sexually molested a 15-year-old boy 2 years ago. This is a recurring theme when it comes to those the pastors close to Trump. I mean, take a look at Robert Morris. There's been several other pastors that we've reported on as well in the past that all have close ties to Trump, and they're all connected to child trafficking. It's amazing how that works. Parents should be able to trust that church leaders will protect children. Cherokee County Assistant District Attorney Lena Pope said in a press release Friday, silence and inaction only deepen the harm. Protecting children must always come first. The mother of a teenager who attends Worship with Wonders Church, just the name alone of that church should be sending off red flags and sirens all over the place. You can usually tell a lot from a church just by the name of the church, I'll tell you what. The mother of a teenager who attended Worship with Wonders Church went to Pastor Miles and Delana Rutherford in September 2023. With accusations, prosecutors said. She told them that her 15-year-old son had exchanged more than 12,500 text messages, some obscene, with Marcus Kendall Turner, a leader at the church. When the Rutherfords didn't react quickly enough, the mother called 911. Turner, by the way, it's required, if you're in the church and somebody comes to you with that, they are required to contact the police. Turner, now former director of operations at the church in Powder Springs, was arrested a month later. He pleaded guilty February 9th to aggravated child molestation, sexual exploitation of children, and enticing a child for indecent purposes. The 34-year-old was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Again, y'all know what I think he should actually get. After he's released, he will be required to register as a sex offender. You better not get released. But according to the Cherokee County District Attorney's Office, other church leaders bear some blame as well. In the February 20th press release, District Attorney Susan Cade Treadaway's office said Worship with Wonders leadership was informed of the allegations, but did not immediately call law enforcement. Church leaders disputed this in an online statement released the following day on February 21st. They say police were contacted, but did not specify which department or when. I know who I tend to believe in this case, but you make up your own mind. The Rutherfords founded Worship with Wonders, which meets in a renovated shopping center in Cobb County in 2007. In recent years, they connected with Trump administration senior faith advisor Paula White Cain. The Rutherfords joined White Cain and others at the White House in December, praying that the president in the Oval Office, Delana Rutherford, led worship. And there they are, right there. Part of that group. I will confidently tell you right now, any face that is surrounding Trump and Trump himself is a face that you cannot trust and you should not support. I will say that. They denied they mishandled allegations against Tucker, posting a statement on Instagram on Saturday in response to any misinformation being circulated. The pastors called police, the statement said, and reported Turner after meeting with all the parties involved as well as other pastors and local authorities who could offer advice. But Cobb County Police Department says no one from the church filed a report. It is possible to call and not file a report. Again, they're required to, according to the police department, records department, but the only report on record is the one filed by the victim's mother. A review of video recordings of church services in September and October 20. A review of video recordings of church services in September and October of 2023, from the time police started investigating Turner to the weeks after he was arrested, does not show leaders asking potential victims to come forward. Church leaders do not appear to have spoken about the crime directly in a church service. There's a common theme when it comes to it, specifically in situations like this. When an organization, doesn't matter if it's a church or a business or an organization, doesn't directly deal with something like this head on, it's usually a good sign of guilt or shame. Not all the time, but it's usually a good indicator. So I tend to go with that. The church hosted one of Trump's biggest faith-focused events during a 2024 campaign. 1 month after the election, Trump sat on stage with White Cain, answering personal questions casually for about an hour. We jump down. It says the case was set to go to trial in 2026, but Turner, facing a possible maximum charge of 180 years in prison, changed his plea to guilty. He was sentenced to the mandatory minimum of 25 years. And again, this is one of those things. The modern church is, at least it's being reported. It's coming to light. There's a lot more information coming out. These pastors all over the place are getting just hit just with sexual misconduct and child trafficking and child molestation and covering up child abuse crimes and all of these things. We just talked about what was going on, the situation in, I can't remember the country, but there's another connection to a mega church who was helping cover up a Lori, and connected to another church. Again, it's slipped my mind. I'm sure somebody in the comments will tell me, but we just talked about that and what's going on there. And it's just, there's so many pastors. I just read another one. I was also in North Carolina, another pastor, a pastor and his wife. They were, they were also foster parents, and all the kids that went in there, they were abusing those kids. Not only sexual abuse, but they were also doing just psychological abuse, where they would get a pet for the kid, and if the kid doesn't do something that they wanted them to do, that they would abuse the animal. Sometimes shoot an animal or run over an animal in front of the kid to psychologically abuse them, and they claim to be another pastor couple and stuff, and it's becoming widespread. This stuff is starting to come out, and all these pastors that continue to do these things continue to retain positions in churches or ministries, or they go on and make another church, or they go on and do home church, or they continue to move forward, and Christians continue to go to them and support them. And you wonder why it's the way it is. You're welcome to the days of Noah. Welcome to the days of Lot. We have hit that point. We've been there, but it just continues to get worse and worse and worse. And we're seeing this right here as well. So all I can say is, guys, don't worry. Justice is coming. God God will take care of this, and these people will get what is right according to the justice that God serves, His holiness will serve. So we'll just hang on to that. That's all we can do is just hang on to that. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me to this one, for this Wretched Recap. Again, this was a heavier one, but it's stuff that we do got to talk about. We got to cover this stuff. And yeah, if you're not tuning into those live streams that we do, we're live every Tuesday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, and 9 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys tune in for those. And hopefully you guys have a great weekend. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out. Maranatha.